Hey guys, welcome back to Jardin Autoworks. If you like working on cars and trucks, if you like doing fabrication, if you like doing modifications to your vehicles, you have come to the right place. Make sure and hit that like and subscribe button for more content. Today we're going to be working on the exhaust for the red Buggy, so let's get to it. Alright guys, what we're working on today is we're working on the exhaust. So we've got a piece of the original exhaust tube coming off of the header itself. But what we want to do is we want to take some pipe and we want to bend it around so that it follows this line here and it's running parallel. So we want to bend it from the end of the exhaust outlet and then make it run parallel with the bottom cradle, the frame rail on the cradle. So what we'll do is we'll find the angle between the outlet and then the bottom cradle tube, and then we'll run the calculations so that we know how much pipe we're going to bend and what angles we're going to bend, and then we'll look and see what kind of exhaust pipe that we have, or what kind of muffler system we have. I think we have a couple of motorcycle mufflers that would be kind of cool on this ride. And then we'll make a determination on how long of a pipe we're going to need, as well as kind of the placement of the muffler itself as it comes out of the back of the buggy. Alright, now we got our tube cut to length. We're going to stick it in the tubing bender here. We've got the 1 3/4 dies in there. Plug them in. We got the air hooked up. We're ready to bend here. I really need to paint this and get the stickers on it. But anyway, we've got the angle finder here. Set him up on 0 here. So we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to bend this in 2 steps because we need 145 degrees. We'll go 90 and then we'll have to reset and then we'll bend it again to 55 to create the 145 degree bend. So let's take him around to 90 degrees. Okay, we're at good 90 degrees right there. So now we have to reset, release the cylinder so that it goes all the way back, and then we'll hit the next hole. Here it's just underneath the spring, so you can't see it. And then we'll continue to push that that additional 55 degrees for that 145 bend. So we're going to run it up until the pin is tight up here. And then we'll reset our angle finder. Set up at 90 degrees right there. We're going to push another 55 degrees, and then we'll look at the spring back at that point. We've got 3 degrees of spring back, so we'll push him up to 58. All right. Yeah, we're at 158. So we got it. So we'll put him up on the exhaust and take a closer look at it and make sure it's the bend we want, because we're set up here with the clamp block. We'll leave the clamp block alone until we figure out if this is the bend we want or if we need to bend it a little bit more. Okay, so holding the pipe up in there, kind of where we want him. So you can see the bend came out perfect, so it's parallel with the bottom of the cradle there, but it's below the cradle. I'd say a good 3 or 4 inches below the bar. Let's find out what kind of bend we need to put in the next pipe so that it gets us back above the bottom of the cradle and then parallel to the cradle, so that we can put the muffler on that pipe. All right, guys, I just wanted to kind of go over my thought process here in building that exhaust system. So when we got on the Buggy, we had that little stub piece of pipe coming out of the header. So I took the angle finder and measured it out. It was 45 degrees. Then I took that angle finder and I put it on the cradle itself, on that lower bar that we wanted to be parallel to, and that came out at 10 degrees. So subtracting the two, we find the interior angle, or the inside angle, which ended up to be 35 degrees. So that was the first bend, and that was what we were doing. Is we were instead of doing that inside angle, we were wanting to bend all the way around. So basically that angle that we needed, the outside angle, was 180 degrees minus 35, so we needed a 145 degree angle. So we bent that up. The angle came out perfect, but what I didn't account for was that the radius of the die, 6 inch, has now a diameter of 12 inches. So when you bent the tube to 145, it came out right. All of the angles were right. We had a 45 up here, and then we came out to this, and we're parallel to the lower tube on the cradle, but we were 3 inches below it, 3 inches below the cradle. So I looked at what the center line of the stub piece coming out of the header versus the center line of the cradle tube that we were trying to align with, and that was 9 inches. So we were right on the money. It was at a 12-inch diameter, you'd expect it to be 3 inches below the bottom of the cradle. So wrote that here. It's just the 1 3/4 die has a 6-inch radius or a 12-inch diameter. So the 145-degree angle works, but you end up 3 inches below the engine cradle. So the thought process from there is, how do we use that 1 3/4 tube and get it up above the cradle as quickly as possible, and then go parallel to the cradle tube. So, well, you got to do a 180. So we come out of the pipe at 45 degrees. We bend that 180. Let's see, it's up here. We come out at 45. We bend that 180, and then we come up above the bottom of the cradle tube, and then turn that 35 degrees so that now we're running parallel to the bottom cradle tube. So we know from the angles that we figured out initially over here at 35 degrees, the difference between the angle of the stub piece coming out of the header versus the center line, or the angle of the cradle tube that we're trying to be parallel to. We figured that out at 35 degrees. So if we come out at 45 degrees and do 180, we're coming up at 45 degrees, but now we got to settle it back down to match the bottom cradle tube, so that because of the interior angles and stuff, we come up with that 35 degrees again. I've got some math here, and I'll try and explain the math on that one too. Okay, here's the math on the length of the tube and the bends, the lengths of the bend in the tube. So in black up top here, that's our first attempt at trying to do the 145 degree bend. So figuring out the length of tube that I needed to cut, I came out at 24 1/8 to give me just a little bit extra on the end, just so that because it came out to be an odd number, 24.08. It came out to be just a little bit odd, so I rounded up so that I had enough pipe for sure. Measured out where the clamp block face should be, and the Rogue Fabrication bender has some numbers on their stickers that go on the side of the machine, so that you know from the face of the clamp block where the tube will start to bend or draw through the machine. So and that's at 5 7/8 according to their sticker. So because the first bend didn't work, the 145 degree bend didn't work, now we're trying that second bend, which is the 180 degree bend, and then the 35 degree bend. So we did the calculations on that one, and we came up with 40.36 inches of pipe is necessary. I rounded up to 40.375, or 40 and 3/8 of an inch. That gives me enough pipe to do all the bends and everything that I want to do. And I tried to explain kind of where the numbers are coming from here. So the 6-inch number comes from this 5 7/8. So 6 inches covers that length of from the face of the clamp block to the start of the bend. So if you always have 6 inches in a 6-inch diameter die, you'll always cover that length of from the clamp block to the start of the bend. The length of the bend itself is identified by this 0.104. Again, that number is on a sticker on the side of the machine that tells you for a 6-inch diameter die you need to multiply that 0.104 times the angle that you want to bend. So, and that will give you the length of the bend. So breaking that down just a little bit further so you kind of understand where the numbers are coming from. The length of the bend is the radius multiplied by the included angle, the angle you want to bend, multiplied by pi over 180 degrees. So that's the equation that's used to come up with the length of the bend. So the radius of the die is known. That's 6 inches. The included angle is the angle that you want to bend, or the angle needed. And then the pi over 180 degrees is a constant. So where that 104 comes from is you know the radius of the die and you know pi over 180. So you multiply those two numbers together, you get the 0.104. Lastly, the 3 inches is the tail after the bend. That's necessary so that the tube doesn't draw past the center of the pressure die. I've had that happen a couple of times and it's really crinkled the pressure die. I need to get some new ones. But that 3 inches is necessary after the bend. So where we're going with this is that for this bender, what you want to try and do is you want to try and start bending the tube from the center out. So in this particular instance, what we have, or what I've tried to do here, by adding the parentheses around each one of the lengths, or around each one of the bends, sorry. So this is one bend at 35 degrees. This is another bend at 180. I've tried to isolate or identify where I need to place the clamp block in order to get the bends that I want, and minimize the number of locations for that clamp block. So I think what I'm able to do here is place the clamp block at about 12 5/8 inches towards the center of the tube. So measure in from one end about 12 and roughly 12 5/8 inches for this 35 degree bend. Leave that clamp block where it is, flip the pipe around, and then bend this second one, which is the 180 degrees. So as we saw in the last whiteboard, we're going to bend it in a line or coplanar, and so we don't have to rotate the pipe at all, or the tube. We can just leave it in line with each bend. So I think what I'll be able to do is bend this 35 degrees, take the pipe out, flip it around, stick it back in the machine, and then bend this 180 degree bend. And that will get us where we need to be for all of the angles that we want to bend to get that exhaust going on. So we're going to try that, and hopefully this comes out. But anyway, that's where the math comes from when you're looking at tube bending. It's not too dissimilar from any other tubing bender. So if you ever want to figure out what the length of the bend is going to be on a different bender, as long as you know the radius of the die you're using, it could be 4.5 inches, it could be 6 inches, it could be 8 inches, whatever, and then you know the angle you want to bend to, you'll always be able to figure out the length of your bend. But one of the things that you need to figure out as a part of figuring out the length of the whole piece of tube that you want to bend is knowing how far from where the tube is clamped or held before it draws through the bender or through the die. And then you add those two together to start getting an idea of the length of the piece of pipe that you need to have. And always you want to add some kind of tail. For the Rogue Fabrication M600, I've always heard that it's like you want at least a 3-inch tail, or a longer tail, so that you don't draw it past the pressure die. So that's kind of what I'm going with here, at the 3 inches. All right, now we got the welder set up, and so what we need to do now is we need to put the exhaust pipe where we think we want it, and then kind of get the muffler in its location also. Then we'll tack it in a couple of places just so that we can step back and just make sure that that's what we want, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've got the muffler and pipe all set up. We're going to bolt it back in place, and then look at the system and find out where we want the exhaust hangers, and see if we need to weld any tabs on the muffler or on the pipe itself to attach the muffler hangers from. We have the exhaust tube turned out slightly. We are maybe an inch and a half below the bottom of the cradle tube at the lowest point, but we're coming out above the cradle rail about 2 to 3 inches higher than the than the lower cradle tube. So I think we're gonna come out good on this. So let me back you off so you can kind of see the whole picture here, and then we'll work on where we want to mount the exhaust hanger. Okay, so that's how the muffler hangs out the back. Let me take you off to the side so you can see how much it sticks out. It's not bad. And it is above the lowest point on the frame here. When I'm doing a wheelie or something, it's not necessarily going to drag. So it's got kind of that question mark shape, but it looks all right. So building the exhaust system was a confidence booster. Being able to run the calculations to find the length of the tube I needed to cut the tube to that length, put it in the tubing bender, and bend it the way it needed to be bent. Yeah, it was a confidence builder. So the next part of the project that needs tubing bent, I've got that much more confidence. So stay tuned, my friends. Next up is plumbing for the radiator. I'm going to try and hardline the system. I've got some inch diameter copper tubing. We're going to do some cutting. We're going to do some soldering. We're going to build and fabricate some structural supports to put underneath that the copper pipe, because it's going to be long runs, and as we're banging around out in the sand, all of that copper tubing needs to be supported so that it's not bouncing all over the place and bending, because it's a super soft metal. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time on Jardin Autoworks. Thanks.